Hi everyone, good afternoon. You are all logged in as in a listen only mode for this 1 hour long webinar. You can communicate through chat function only. We will have 45 minutes of presentation and after that we'll have 15 minutes for Q&A. So everyone, welcome to Hewlett Packard Enterprise's web presentation on big data converting hype to real business outcomes. We thank you for joining us, and over the next 40 minutes, our country director Vivek Ratna would be giving us an overview on big data analytics. Just as an introduction, Vivek Ratna has over 16 years of experience in IT and telecom industry, bulk of which has been in HP itself. Prior to HP, he has worked with Reliance Communications, Wipro and HCL Infosystems. Vivek has an Indian degree from IIT Kharagpur. Now, in case if any one of you have any queries, you are requested to post your queries in the chat box on your screen throughout the presentation, and we would take up these queries post the presentation. We have allocated 15 minutes purely for Q&A, so keep your questions with you, but you can definitely chat in the chat box on this panel. So over to you, Vivek, now.
Thanks, Bhaskar. Thanks a lot. And a big thank you to everyone who have logged into this webinar. I know many of us would have planned to take leave and go on vacations with family. So I really appreciate you taking your time out for this webinar. I sincerely hope I'm able to do some justice to the time that you are going to spend. One second. Yeah. So this is the agenda. Four major items that I'll be talking about. I'll be talking about the current trends, the way we see it, and the way many others also see it. What is the challenge in terms of the value extraction of the data that is there in any organization? We will be referring to also what a few of the consultants like Gartner has a view on this. We'll also be taking view upon what customers have opinion is about it. Then subsequent to that, we'll be talking about what is the ideal data architecture. This is also more about what the customers have been telling us, what we have learned from the customers. And then, of course, we'll be talking about how in a specific HP can help in arriving at the right data architecture in deriving value, true value out of the data for real business outcomes. So for the next, as Bhaskar mentioned, for the next 40 to 45 minutes, we will be talking about this, followed, and then subsequently we'll open it up for question Q&A. I'm not going to make any esoteric statements during the webinar. This is because I don't think I know everything, or I'm a big expert on this big data front. But what I'm going to do more often is to quote customers, as they are the ones I truly believe who can give us the best of the ideas. In fact, the topic of this presentation was also given by a couple of our customers. One of them is the director of analytics of Facebook. He came to one of our events and he talked about 4 big myths on big data. While I won't go into all the details, all the 4 myths of the big data, the first myth that he addressed was big data equal to Hadoop. He said that big data is getting value out of the data for real business outcomes. Hadoop is a technology to achieve that. If Hadoop is able to do that, well and good. If not, then we need to look into something on top of Hadoop or to complement Hadoop in order to achieve big data, which is to get real business outcome. The other company which gave me an idea for this presentation is one of the largest mobile advertisement platform in the world. They are based out of Bangalore. If you haven't guessed the name by now, probably you'll get an idea if I tell you that Economic Times few months back had mentioned it as the most innovative company coming out of India. They happen to be one of the largest players of Hadoop, not only as a user, but also as a contributor to Apache Hadoop. Recently, we did a project with them and I learned quite a bit from them, which I will also be referring to this in this presentation. One thing that is common between these two companies, whether Facebook and or the mobile advertisement company that I'm referring to, is that data becomes the core of their business. And using data for deriving business outcomes to create new possibilities and enhance their competitiveness. And they are not alone. In fact, there are quite a few. We are living in an idea economy now. The world's largest taxi company, they don't own any taxi in their inventory. We talked about Facebook. They are the most popular media owner, but they don't create any content of their own. The world's largest custom craft retailer, which is Etsy, they don't own any inventory. There is a microfinance company by the name of Kiva. They have given 715 millions in loans, and they are not a bank. These companies, they are one thing which is common about these companies is that they have disrupted the market. They are, in fact, recently I attended a Forrester roundtable, and one of the things that came up was whether these new business model companies are going to replace the brick and mortar companies. And what the viewpoint was that the brick and mortar companies, especially the leaders, are not going to be replaced. However, they will be challenged by the new ones, and the traditional companies are forced or will be forced to adopt few of the practices of these new age companies. And we have already been seeing that happening in India, where the traditional big companies, the BFSI space, or the telecom space, or retail, they are moving in a big way in making data create new business possibilities for them. These companies, they are realizing that mere knowing about what has happened in the past is not going to be enough. They would like to go deep into the data and understand the trends and patterns based on which they can do some prediction of future with a reasonable degree of accuracy. This has made them change the way they have started looking at the data. In fact, the world of yesterday was pretty simple. And that is more on a retrospective basis, the way if looking easier. But of course, if you ask anyone of the world of yesterday, they would still say that it was complex. But if you look at from today's perspective about the world of yesterday, it was still simple in the sense about the expectation from the data. If you want to get value out of the data, it was predominantly to get reports and to have a single source of truth in the form of an EDW. However, what we have mentioned about in the earlier slide about moving into foresight and insight and foresight. So for moving into the stage of insight and foresight, it had few challenges. The first big challenge was cost. Any EDW traditionally has been very, very expensive. Hardly any EDW project in India which has been for less than $1 million. This means that you always try to make it as optimized as possible. However, even if you are a rich organization, still you can't put too much of data into EDW because the performance used to dip. Currently, we are engaged with a leading private sector bank in India where they are migrating from a traditional EDW platform. They told me that when they had deployed this solution in the year 2006, 2007, the queries used to take few minutes. Now it's taking hours. And ask any analyst, they would like to have more and more data, as well as with high performance from different sources or different types of data to run any model with a high degree of accuracy. In any traditional EDW, it's a norm to get reports on data which is 1 day old or even more. And in order to avoid further dip in performance, Most of the reports are either pre-prepared and they are not ad hoc, which meant that the business team would give the ask to the IT team and will get the reports done. So instead of making the business guys or analysts play with the data, they rely on the IT team to get the reports. The fourth limitation is that it has been primarily used for transactional data, which were pure structured data. But with so much of machine logs or human generated data that we are seeing on a day-to-day basis, these are predominantly semi-structured or unstructured data. And the traditional EDWs, they have been found wanting in that. And then Hadoop happened. It, it took care of a number of issues that were traditional there in any EDW. Predominantly, one of the biggest one was the cost of storing huge volume of data. It can store huge volume of data and at a reasonably low price. It uses industry standard hardware and it can store any type of data. And very soon, everyone who wanted to get into big data started to get into Hadoop. And very soon, as the head of analytics of Facebook had mentioned, people started making Hadoop synonymous with big data. That's precisely why I had referred to the first myth in my earlier slide about what the Facebook director of analytics had talked about. But the next slide is what is going to surprise you. This surprised me definitely. Gartner conducted a study among a large number of organizations cutting across different verticals of different sizes. Among all this hype about Hadoop, what is the real utilization of Hadoop, real adoption of Hadoop? 49% of respondents, they said they haven't figured out how to derive value from Hadoop. 57% of respondents said skill gaps are a major inhibitor to Hadoop adoption. If any of you have an account of Hadoop, you can access this report. The link is there. You can access this report and go through the details. But this, when I read this particular report, it was surprising to me. Then in all this while we had also been customers talking, making some statements. One of the customers, Etsy, which I had mentioned in one of the earlier slides, the biggest custom made craft retailers in the world, they told us about Hadoop. Hadoop is a batch oriented system, and as much as they try to put pig and hive on top, it's still not ready for prime time. I think it will be useful if it gets there, but will it be flexible enough to let you run query after query? Right now it's not there. So basically, this Etsy gentleman, Chris Bones, senior, he's the senior database engineer. He is talking about the limitation of concurrency on Hadoop. He talks about still a further relevant point, which I had earlier mentioned as a democratization of data. He talks about one of the points which I have heard from quite a number of customers is that Hadoop still remains an IT system. And if you want to give the access to the business guys, it becomes a tall order. So in which sense, Hadoop becomes a more or less an IT system, and then the IT folks becomes more. While he's a database engineer, he has been candid and he said, IT becomes a data hoarder. But the real value of data comes when the analysts can get the data themselves. That's a better use of their time. Okay. Closer at home, we were engaged with this mobile advertisement company, which I had mentioned earlier. They are one of the biggest players on Hadoop, as I had mentioned. When they had called us initially at the start of the year, I was very, very skeptical. I'll be very honest. I asked them point blank, why are they looking for something else when they have a full-fledged data architecture on Hadoop? And he gave me three simple reasons for that. First, Hadoop is not able to give the performance that a business guy is looking for, especially in case of high concurrencies. This is the same thing that the ITSI gentleman had talked about. He said, many a times it so happened that the business guys used to come complaining that the system is down, but it was only that the system was slow. When they give performance to the business guy, they will move to some other systems for the same reports. So the whole idea of democratizing the data was failing because of the business guys were not able to use the platform, and the IT team was ultimately becoming the data hoarder, to take the same phrase as the ITSI gentleman had said. The second reason, and that was quite surprising to me, was that Hive was not scaling. This is also related to the first point, as this was also contributing to the low performance. The third reason was that while Hadoop implementation seems to be cheap, so anybody who wants to get into big data, there's okay, fine, I'll go with Hadoop because it doesn't cost me much. So Hadoop implementation is cheap. But what this gentleman from this mobile advertisement company told me, and he's a solution architect, he has got a big pedigree. He has come from Yahoo. He has written papers on pig with and on the so he has worked a lot on this whole open source. Okay, so what he said, that while a Hadoop implementation is cheap, Hadoop resources are not. There's a huge gap between demand and supply, because of which, even if you are able to get Hadoop resources, retention of Hadoop resources becomes extremely difficult, especially with so many organizations with well-funded VC funded. Retaining Hadoop resources becomes extremely difficult, and over a period of time it becomes very expensive. So his point was that he wanted to reduce the dependency on the Hadoop layer more as a data store, rather than giving it to the business guys who wants uptime, who wants performance, and who sees it as a business critical system. So he gave me a nice idea about. I asked him, so what should be the right data architecture should be? They're still big into Hadoop, and they will continue to be big into Hadoop. So he explained me in a very simple form, which I keep on using, and that is what I'm using it right here also. He said that any organization can look at its complete data in the form of the topmost layer, which represents a small data, but which is used for running very fast queries. These may be simple queries, but the users need the results in sub-seconds. Now, if you want to understand the patterns and trends of these results, you need more data. So you need to deep dive into a bigger volume of data. So if the top layer is, say, 1 terabyte, the next layer or the second layer becomes 50 terabyte or 100 terabyte or 500 terabyte or even more. This layer, along with the first layer touch the business folks. So performance is the key. That too in a huge volume of data. Then comes the third layer, which is meant for doing innovations, for applying data science. This layer is used by the data scientists who do very deep analysis. For them, performance is important, but not as important as the volume and variety of data. This layer will have the maximum volume of data and represents what is normally called a data lake. The topmost layer, which needs sub-second performance, is best catered by an in-memory database. The second layer, and in the first layer, you have got quite a number of options in memory databases, which I need not go into. The second layer is best suited by a high-performing MPP columnar database. The third layer is best catered by Hadoop. Now so this is about the characteristics of the three layers in terms of the volumes, in terms of what makes each of the layer, in terms of the expectations from the different users. Now there is another facet to that. These three layers should not be the islands of data. Wherever the data is, any user should be in a position to access that data, which means that the integration between the different layers becomes extremely important. Of course, if a business user is firing any query which is not at the analytical layer but at the data lake layer, there might be the performance may not be as great as he's expecting otherwise, but still his queries will still be run. So what is HP's play into all this? HP's play is in the second layer with a product called HPE Vertica. In the top layer, one can go for, as I had earlier mentioned, one can go for any in-memory database. To name a few, for example, a VoltDB or H2, which is based on open source. And on the third layer, one can go for any Hadoop distribution file system, Hortonworks, Cloudera, MapR, anyone. It fits the bill perfectly. That is HPE Vertica, because apart from being an extremely fast columnar database, it is based on industry standards, and as such can provide seamless integration with the top layer as well as the third layer, the in-memory database as well as the Hadoop. And with its rich SQL on Hadoop capabilities, it can help the users fire queries at the Hadoop layer. Now, till now, I have been talking about the generics, about the data architecture, about the challenges, the right data architecture. Now I'll get into a few specifics. I'll get into a few specific about HPE Vertica and how it fits into the overall architecture. Before I get into the details of HPE Vertica, I thought that I should be putting this slide. I don't know how many of you are aware that Facebook uses Vertica as its analytical platform. For Facebook, data is the core of the business. So for them, deriving business value of the data is extremely important. You must have also heard, or you must be knowing, that Hive came out of the shop of Facebook. So this becomes all the more surprising that they are using Vertica for querying into for firing SQL queries onto Hadoop, apart from using Vertica as an analytical platform. And there is a nice testimonial which the Facebook CIO has mentioned, which is there in the slide. Apart from Facebook, the names that I had mentioned in one of the earlier slides, whether it is Uber, whether it is Eatsy, whether it is Kiva, whether it is Twitter, whether it is Zynga, whether it is AT&T, all of them are using Vertica in a big way. Zynga, in fact, they ingest 10 terabyte of data into Vertica on a daily basis. So these are the global names. Sorry. If you had been wondering where are the Indian names, yeah, the trend has been very much similar in India as well. I'm not able to show the logos of the Indian customers because we need to take the rights from them for putting the logos, and HP Enterprise is very particular on that front. But just to give you an idea about what do I mean when I say the trend is very similar even in India. Two of the largest e-commerce companies in India, they are using Vertica as their analytics platform on top of Hadoop. You would have already guessed which are the two, because there are three big e-commerce companies, right? I have already mentioned about the biggest mobile advertisement company based out of Bangalore. Okay, apart from a couple of other mobile advertisement companies who are also using Vertica for their analytical platform. One of the biggest private sector banks, they are referred as the one which changed the way banking is done in India during the 90s. You would have guessed it. They are undertaking a big data project involving Vertica and MapR. They are not only creating a big data platform, but as well as deploying close to 15 use cases on this platform to help them derive real business outcomes. One of the telcos, which is positioning itself for future in a big way by focusing on data, is using Vertica as their EDW. They still haven't got deployed a data lake, but they are in discussions for the same with us. The single theme of all these organizations, the organizations that are named in these slides and the ones that I have just talked, is that they have thought end to end about the data architecture from the perspective of the different types of users, the queries that are run, the performance demand from the different users, and they have used HPE Vertica and Hadoop to derive real business outcomes. So what are the reasons why these companies of such repute have chosen HPE Vertica in their data architecture? I won't get into the details. This is not a forum to get into the details about the technical details about HPE Vertica. But while I have talked about how Vertica fits into the ideal data architecture, let me get into 5 major capabilities of, or rather not get touch at a very high level, 5 major capabilities of HPE Vertica. The first one, Vertica is seriously fast. In fact, whichever customers I or anyone within HPE Vertica have gone and met, this is normally the entry criteria, either for a greenfield project or even if they want to migrate from one of the traditional ones onto a next gen big data platform. Like, probably we may not be fast at everything. That if a customer is testing, say 20 queries, all the 20 queries will be damn fast vis-a-vis anyone. But in an overall performance, we are the best. And the best part is that HPE Vertica doesn't need an appliance. It doesn't need any special hardware. It doesn't need any flash drive. It doesn't need any InfiniBand. If you are having any industry standard x86 hardware with standard network ports, with the standard SAS hard drives, you can run Vertica with that, and you can get the performance. I have mentioned just one customer, Zift. That by 100%, the query time got reduced by a factor of 100. That is, if a query is taking 1 hour, now with Vertica, it is taking in seconds. That is somewhere around 36 or 40 seconds. And if the query performance is using that terminology, it means 3.6 seconds. So that is number one. Number two is Vertica scales while still being fast. Facebook, their total data in Vertica is running into petabytes, double digits of petabytes. Okay. That's the real huge volume of data which is there in Vertica. And they are using the data that they are getting is the advertisement related data for doing revenue analysis across different geographies, across different sections of society, different demographies. They're able to refresh the data this petabytes of data every 1 hour. That is because the data, that is how they have created the whole data architecture. So now, just imagine from the business perspective, they are able to play with the data which is as recent as the last 1 hour. That's a huge value creation that they are able to do in this fast world of digital media. Right. Of course, Hadoop can also store as much data as us and even more. Okay, that is why they are the real data architect, ideal data architecture places Hadoop in the data lake layer. But it can't do anything with that kind of data in a reasonable amount of time. And as I had mentioned earlier, we can do all this scale up using its standard hardware. You can start with 3 nodes, you can start with 5 nodes, you can start with whatever number of nodes, and then you can keep on increasing. There are so many customers of ours which is started with 3 nodes, which is started with 5 nodes. The e-commerce companies that I talked about, the 2 e-commerce companies, they started with 3 nodes. Now they are into 24 nodes. Of course, it was primarily to do enterprise ready. Vertica is not only meant for discovery, it can handle production workloads as well. In fact, most of the organizations, whether in India or outside India, who have been on traditional EDW or would like to move on to Vertica, they place a huge value on this particular point, because their point is that whatever their existing EDW is doing, Vertica should also be doing the same thing and much more. Now, if the existing EDW is supposedly enterprise ready, it can handle mixed workloads. They place a huge emphasis on Vertica doing the same. And we have been able to prove that Vertica we can handle mixed workloads. It is enterprise ready. It can handle production environment workloads. And this is something which is on the softer part of the organization. And while this doesn't talk about the technology, this talks about the organization, the HPE Vertica as such. Because many of our customers have come back and told us. For example, Facebook, one of the reasons why they decided to go ahead with Vertica was the people that were engaged from our side with Facebook. And what Tim Campos, the CIO, says, the people that we have worked with on Vertica, they have meshed incredibly well with our culture. And they are a new organization, they are a young organization. Hearing that from this kind of a testimonial from them, that's a great pride for us. We are very demanding, we are very results demanding, we are very innovative. It's just been tremendous to have a partner with Vertica that thinks the same way that we do. Change the name from Facebook to any other customer. In India, in particular, Indian customers are demanding. And I think we have lived up to that. In fact, I am based out of Mumbai, but whenever I travel to say Delhi or Bangalore, even if I visit for a day, I make it a point that I meet at least one existing customer just to say how is it going? Is everything going fine? Can we do anything more with you, or are you facing any issue in terms of support or anything? We bring a lot of nimble-footedness on the ground in this organization. So this is just a summary about the 5 capabilities that I talked. As I had said, I won't be getting into the details, but just touching about the 5 major capabilities and why people have chosen Vertica to fit into the data architecture to derive the business outcomes. Now the question is, how does Vertica fit into this triangle data architecture? If I have to use a very simple terminology, triangle data architecture mentioned earlier. How can data be easily accessible to different users, irrespective of where the data is? With Vertica, you can do this because of its rich Vertica SQL and Hadoop capabilities. We have made it easier for organizations to leverage this as a start. We took the Vertica engine, excluded the data store part, and just retained the SQL and Hadoop capabilities and created a separate product called Vertica SQL and Hadoop. So while Vertica Enterprise, it can give everything what is mentioned in this slide, we have also created a very thin product called Vertica SQL and Hadoop. So if a customer says that I just want to use the SQL and Hadoop capabilities to do SQL queries onto Hadoop, he can just go for Vertica SQL and Hadoop. He need not go for Vertica Data Store. But of course, we're going for Vertica Data Store will give that analytical platform, which is much faster. Vertica SQL for Hadoop offers you the most enterprise-ready way to perform SQL queries on your Hadoop data. We have leveraged our years of experience in the big data analytics market and further opened up our platform to tap into the full power of Hadoop. By offering a rich, fast, and enterprise-ready implementation of SQL and Hadoop, you can perform analytics regardless of the format of data on Hadoop distribution. Vertica for SQL and Hadoop handles your mission-critical analytics projects by merging the best of our analytics platform with the best that Hadoop can offer. While a number of features are mentioned in this slide, I would just take few key takeaways regarding HPE Vertica, SQL, and Hadoop. Number one, which is extremely important, it is platform agnostic. We could have created our own Hadoop the way many other organizations have created. But we took a very conscious decision that if we have to give the flexibility to the customer, our analytical layer, which is based on Vertica, it has to be completely analytics to the Hadoop distribution file. So if a customer says, I want to go with MapR, go ahead with MapR. If one wants to go with Cloudera, go ahead with Cloudera. If one wants to go with Hortonworks, go ahead with Hortonworks. Second part is, since we have petabytes of deployments, we can bring the enterprise level support system and the services organization. That's a huge plus point. Recently, I was talking to one organization and they were saying that, okay, I want to go for this, but I don't know what kind of support it will be. Support is one big part that we bring onto the table into this complete data architecture. And of course, since it is completely based on industry standard ANSI SQL, business can minimize switching costs and learning curves for users with the family ANSI SQL syntax. Analysts can continue to use familiar BI analytics tool that assume and auto-generate ANSI SQL code to interact with any Hadoop distribution. If you are using Pentaho, or if you are using Tableau, or if you are using Cognos, these are industry standard. They can sit on top of Vertica, and one can use them to fire queries using Vertica onto Hadoop. So now Vertica becomes a critical layer for the different types of users. Analysts, they're most interested in using the preferred BI data visualization tools. They are the interface for any analyst. They don't care about what is there in the backend engine. They need the comfort and they need the performance. now with Vertica, they can query and visualize the results with the BI tool that they are comfortable with. DBAs, they're always under duress in handling the different workloads and requests from the organization. Using Hadoop for less demanding, less intensive analytical requests to tier of core data and tapping into the rich, high performance analytics on data stored in the ROS format helps them to address the full and varying needs of internal and external users. Data engineers, they can ingest all emerging form of data, including Avro, JSON, from sensor data and log files for increasingly popular analytical use cases. For top performance, these data engineers can store data in highly optimized Vertica. And of course, if they want to do some optimization in terms of performance and cost, then they can take a decision on where the data can be. The performance is fastest when the data is there in Vertica, and it will be a bit slower when the data is in Hadoop. Yeah. So I think I'm able to complete this within the stipulated time. So the final message that is there with the triangle architecture, if I have to use the word once again, is that you have the data with the simple triangle architecture that I was taught by one of my own customers. You can seize the complete data for real business outcomes. So with this, I'm coming to the end of my presentation, and I can open the forum for any Q&A.
So hi all, we are now starting the Q&A. Would request you all to post your questions on the chat boxes. So Vivek, questions have started coming in. We'll find the questions. We'll start posting those questions on your chat boxes.
Sure. Okay, one question has come. Can I deploy Vertica in cloud? Yes, you can. In fact, there are several ways of deploying Vertica in cloud. One is that Vertica comes in different flavors. One is the Vertica Enterprise Edition. You can deploy that in premise. You can deploy that in dedicated servers. You can deploy that in virtualized environment within your own data center, or you can even deploy this in a cloud like an AWS. At the same time, we have also come out with a cloud offering or a SaaS offering called Vertica on Demand that is available in AWS. You can go and you can start using Vertica straight away. It's very simple, and one can start using Vertica on cloud in a very small manner straight away. So yes, Vertica can be used in cloud, whether you want to own Vertica as an asset or whether you want to take Vertica as a service. You can do that. Okay, another question which has come. Okay, what kind of investments any organization needs to do for this? By this I mean the question is related to HPE Vertica. Okay, so the investment that one needs to go for in case of HPE Vertica, or for the, I'll say, since we are talking about the complete data architecture, let me talk from that perspective. So one can go for the third layer, which is the data lake. One can go for any Hadoop distribution file system, whatever you are comfortable with, or even if you want to go for an Apache Hadoop, because that is free, but then support becomes an issue. So one needs to take a call on that. Of course, Cloudera, Mapper or Hortonworks, they are on subscription basis with a varying degree of prices. Okay, and of course you will be needing hardware for that. So that talks about the third layer, which is the data lake layer. The second layer, which is the analytical layer, that for that what you will be needing Vertica. You can go for Vertica Enterprise Edition, and you need to go for Vertica hardware. As I said earlier, you need not go for you need no need for an appliance. You can go for any hardware. Okay, any x86 hardware, industry standard hardware. And we can help you in terms of the what is the ideal configuration that is required, but which is pretty simple: 2 CPU, 20 core sort of a configuration, which is there, 64 GB RAM, not very high memory intensive thing, which is there. So the hardware is also not very expensive. And the good part is that Vertica, the data gets compressed immensely to the degree of somewhere around 70%, 80%, 90%. So if you are going for say 100 terabyte on Vertica, it can get compressed to say 20 terabyte. So the infrastructure requirement gets reduced drastically. So in case of Vertica, in case of the analytical layer, you can there are two investments. One is the infrastructure, which is simple x86 servers, and second is the Vertica Enterprise Edition. Of course, the investment will depend on what kind of volume one is talking about. But these are the basically the nuts and bolts or the components which will make the investments. Then on the top layer, one can go for any in-memory database. If you choose to go for an open source, say an H2 is good, or probably for an enterprise layer, say VoltDB or anything else that you can think of. That also should be good enough. But the good part is that one can start from any point. One can start from the data lake layer or the analytical layer or whichever layer, and then they can keep on moving or expanding in the other layers as well. Okay. Now another question is there: does it support non-structured text data processing? Yes, it supports JSON, it supports Avro type of a data. So you can directly ingest that data into Vertica. So which means that it can open up lots of possibilities with the machine logs, with the IoT types of use cases. Yes, it can also ingest that text data as well. What it can't ingest, that also I should make it very clear. It can't ingest the image data. It can't ingest the video data. They are through the unstructured data. Okay, but why? I'll be very honest. While people are talking about all this video data and the image data, and this has been there being talked quite a lot in the last two or 3 years. We haven't seen too many of use cases around that, around for the customers. Okay, in fact, I was last month I had attended a symposium of Gartner, and I was very pleased to see that in their hype curve, the whole word of big data had come down. Okay, which is good because people thought that big data is going to solve the world hunger, solve all the problems. But now they're coming to the terms that if they're able to take care, if they're able to get more value out of the structured and the machine generated data, that itself is going to make huge impact on their business and in terms of deriving real business outcomes. Okay, another question which is there: does HP Vertica offer any data visualization services? Assuming the topmost layer offering from HP Vertica is only a SQL interface. No, as of now, no. There is no data visualization services from Vertica. But as I had said, since Vertica is completely based on industry standard, it can work with any visualization tool. It can work with any data discovery visualization tool like the modern ones like the Tableau or which is the other one? I'm forgetting the name. But anyway, I'm forgetting the ClickView, yeah, or ClickView, or the ones which have been used in a big way in terms of the reporting, that is the Cognos MicroStrategy. For example, Facebook has deployed MicroStrategy with Vertica. So as many organizations, even in India. So it can work with any visualization tool, industry standard visualizer. Even in open source, Pentaho, it can work with any visualization. Vertica can work with that. Okay, there's another question. Is it somewhat similar to Spark? Of course, with hardware capabilities. I will have, this will take some time, but no, it is not similar to Spark. It is different. This question has come from Mr. Atma Ram. So Atma Ram, if you can just send me a mail with your contact details, probably we can get in touch with you and we can have a separate discussion on this, because we'll have to get into how the detailed differentiation happens between Vertica and Spark. But one thing is there, while we have touched upon Spark, and which clearly shows, and it is, I'm not at all surprised, because many of us have got a huge stake, and we are very comfortable with the open source. And open source, lots and lots of innovations are happening on a daily basis, and we also feel the same way. And that is precisely why we believe that we have to keep on helping the customers keep pace with the innovations that is happening with open source, especially the business folks. Yesterday there is something, today there is MapReduce, tomorrow there can be something else. How can customers keep on keeping in pace with the innovations that is happening? So we keep on working very, very closely with the open space environment, with the open source environment. So we created something called distributed R. It was created by HP Labs, and so many IPs have been created by HP Labs. You must have heard about the whole HP history in the last 75 years, right? We distributed R. HP Labs also created distributed R. We have given it to open source. Now it is in GitHub, the whole thing. So we work very closely with the open source environment. And now in the latest release of Vertica, which is called Excavator, we have created a very tight integration with Kafka. Very tight integration with Kafka. Now that's a very exciting stuff, because with Vertica, with analytical platform, till now we have been talking about batch mode, that you are getting data in batches into Vertica, and then Vertica will be processed, running the queries extremely fast for the business guys or the analysts, for helping them take actions. Now with the Kafka integration, you can have in-stream data coming into Vertica and doing analysis. So we are talking about near real-time analytical capabilities coming into Vertica, thanks to the integration with Kafka. So we are working very closely with the open source community and contributing a lot to open source, seeing how we can keep on helping the customers with Vertica, keeping a pace with open source. There is another question. Can I use Vertica for data transformation and staging? Like I want to implement ELT approach by using Vertica. I won't suggest that, no, because there are tools which are better in doing that. Yes, you can do the queries part into Vertica, but in terms of the extraction and transformation part into Vertica, I don't think Vertica will be best suited for doing that. Yeah, Vertica in combination with Hadoop, that can be a great combination for this whole thing. But Hadoop can play the role of the ELT, and Vertica can play the role of the analytical layer. Okay, is there a use case of manufacturing industry using Vertica or big data / Hadoop? How will it help the industry? Yeah, so now we are talking a lot of seeing a lot of use cases around IoT. Okay, and how can we improve certain processes using the data which is getting generated from the different systems within the manufacturing unit. And what I got to learn in fact, from Gartner only in that symposium, that most of the equipments that are there in any manufacturing units, they themselves are producing lots and lots of data. It's only that we are not utilizing that data. So if we start collecting that data and generate the right use cases, we can start seeing some real benefits even in manufacturing. I'll give you an example, and this came as a big surprise to me. I had never thought that HR can be a potential customer for Vertica. I had never thought. HR would have been the last business unit or the last organization within an organization who I could have thought of being a potential potential customer of Vertica. So this customer, they said they are very, very employee focused. They said that for me, I don't believe that customer comes first, which was a very, very pleasant thing to hear, because normally the cliche is that that customer first. He said employee first. His point of view is that if my employee is happy, they will keep my customers happy. So I have to keep my employees happy. Now, there may be that it may be so happening that there is a certain super manager who is meeting his numbers, who is blowing his numbers, cracking his numbers year after year, but his way of working may not be the right in terms of getting the best out of the people and keeping the people happy, and there might be attritions at a high rate higher than what is the norm in the organization. What is the way? Can you ask the employee? Normally in India, employees, they don't go against the boss in an open forum. Probably in America it might be different, but in India, that is my experience. Normally in India, they don't do that. Very few are very open in terms of completely going to his boss's boss and saying that my boss is not great. Yeah. And all of a sudden the guy can resign and just go off, and he may be a good talent to be retained. So this HR guy says that right now I'm just taking surveys. I'm asking them questions. Are you happy? What more we can do and all that. So he's trying to tap into his conscious mind. He may speak truth. He may not speak truth. In all possibility, he may not speak truth. He may not even be aware what is the truth, the employee himself. So he said that if he's not able to tell me in a conscious stage, I want to reach into the subconscious stage. If my employee is tensed, if my employee is not happy, there will be some impact on his vital statistics. His pulse may become irregular, his pulse rates, his heart rate may go, his heartbeat may go up, his perspiration may start going higher or lower, whatever it is. Okay, so all these vital statistics may start changing. If I start capturing these details, and I start seeing some patterns with respect to regions, with respect to managers, I can start seeing how my employees' emotional value is right now, and that will help me in improving the happiness factor of my employees. In fact, I was surprised to know that the CEO has got 3 dashboards in his cabin, 3 big monitors, and one of the monitor is to capture how his employees are feeling. Of course, that is based on the survey or the questions which keeps on happening using a app on the mobile on a daily basis. But this is what the HR guy wants to do. He wants to have a wristband on every employee and just keep on capturing all these vitals data about his heartbeats, pulse rates, about his perspirations, all these things, and seeing what is the pattern. How can I improve? I had never expected that an HR could be a potential customer, but this is what is happening. He saw a problem, he saw the data can help him, and this is a typical IoT case. Okay, and I'm sure in many of the manufacturing units also we can see such islands where we can help them solve certain challenges which using data, using IoT of Internet of Things.
Vivek, we'll take this last question.
Yeah. How do you compare Vertica with IBM? big insights. Okay, so normally we don't want to get into a comparison of that is our corporate policy vis-a-vis competition. We like to talk about our own products because we feel that we can talk about our own products in the best possible manner. But in case, so this question is by from Milind. In case Milind, you want to get into the details, I can have a separate discussion with you. My email ID is mentioned out here. You can drop me a mail. I can get in touch with you, and we can have a discussion on this.
I think that's about it.
Thank you, Vivek, for an insightful presentation. We also thank everyone for participating in this webinar, and I'm sure that the presentation has been very helpful and has given you insights on strengthening your big data analytics. We request you to participate in the polling, as this would enable us to better our web presentations in the future. And we shall also be sharing the presentation with you for your reference shortly after this webinar. If you have any further questions, you can write to us on response@hpeconnect.com or info@analyticsindiamac.com. We thank you again for the time you have given and have a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.